Ganon, also known by his human form, Ganondorf, is the main antagonist of the Legend of Zelda series. Ganon is a nickname for Ganondorf and the name given to him when he transforms into his monster form, a boar-like beast. He made his debut appearance in the very first game, The Legend of Zelda, and has since been present or referred to in most subsequent titles. He is the arch-nemesis of Link and Princess Zelda. Introduced in The Legend of Zelda as a monstrous Prince of Darkness, Ganon's character has seen much development throughout the series, from being a simple monster to a powerful warlock with deeper motives to his actions. As the incarnation of the Demon King demises hatred for those with the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero, or, according to Hyrule Historia, the reincarnation of Demise himself, Ganon is destined to eternally reincarnate to pursue world domination. In most cases, though, he makes a return after being resurrected or breaking a seal. Four Swords Adventures is a notable exception, featuring a reincarnated Ganondorf. The Ganondorf from Tears of the Kingdom also appears to be different, having lived at the time of one of Hyrule's foundings. The original first incarnation of Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time appears in most other games, making him stand out from other villains as the same character from game to game. Ganon is the possessor of the Triforce of Power, imbued with the essence of the goddess Din. This divine relic makes Ganon unimaginably strong and grants him boundless mystical power, making him a grave threat to the land of Hyrule and the world. Additionally, Ganon is the source of darkness. As stated in prophecy, the only one capable of defeating Ganon is the hero who is chosen by goddesses, Link. Backstory. Ganon is first given a backstory in A Link to the Past. It was revealed that Ganon was not always the massive boar-like demon introduced in The Legend of Zelda. He was revealed to once have been a human by the name of Ganondorf and the leader of a group of thieves. With the help of his followers, he became the first to enter the Sacred Realm in ages. He claimed the Triforce, turning the Sacred Realm into the Dark World, and himself into a vastly powerful being. However, he was trapped within the Sacred Realm by the combined efforts of the Knights of Hyrule and the Sages. In Ocarina of Time, it is explained that the first incarnation of Ganondorf was born a powerful Gerudo sorcerer, one of the human races of Hyrule. The Gerudo twin witches, Kume and Kotake, were his surrogate mothers. The Gerudo are a race of all-female warriors and thieves, to whom only one male is born every century. Because of this, the male is by birthright the king of the Gerudo. Nabooru mentions that she is not following Ganondorf because he stole from women and children and even murdered people. Ganondorf uses his position to betray the king of Hyrule, as well as his cunning manipulative skills and mystical powers to gain entrance to the Sacred Realm, the abode of the Triforce. However, he does not obtain the full Triforce. He is left with only the Triforce of Power, which he uses to great effect in his conquest of Hyrule. In The Wind Waker, Ganondorf's character is given greater depth and a clear motive for his villainy. He states that his desire to conquer Hyrule stems from the arduous life he and his people were subjected to living in the harsh Gerudo Desert, a wasteland plagued by sandstorms and an unstable climate, which he compares unfavorably to the verdant landscape of Hyrule Field and the amenable life lived by the Hylians. He is reborn in Four Swords Adventures, where, although he is still a Gerudo, he is not the king. He begins his transformation into the King of Darkness by violating the Gerudo taboo on the pyramid and seeking out the trident. In Skyward Sword, Ganon is revealed to be the incarnation of the everlasting hatred of the Demon King Demise for those with the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero. Thus, he is destined to eternally reincarnate, becoming the source of various conflicts in the history of Hyrule, which involve various incarnations of Zelda and Link. In Tears of the Kingdom, a later incarnation of Ganondorf was present during one of Hyrule's foundings. It is unclear which iteration of Hyrule the founding depicts. Characteristics. Personality. Ganondorf is an extremely powerful Gerudo warlock who opposes Link and Princess Zelda within the series. As such, he is a villain of pure evil and a cruel, ruthless warlord whose goal is to usurp the kingdom of Hyrule. Ganon's only ambition in life is to obtain the Triforce and dominate the world using the abilities imbued by them. He has many characteristics of a megalomaniac. Despite his undeniable lust for power, Ganon is also a mastermind. He is an adept tactician and a master of manipulation and deceit. It is not unusual for Ganon to manipulate the events of a story behind the scenes, as he did in A Link to the Past, Four Swords Adventures, and Twilight Princess, only to be revealed as the orchestrator in a plot twist. Ganon usually presents himself with the facade of a cynical yet calm and civil man, although he is known to quickly become enraged, ensuing in a murderous rampage. Ganon has no sense of morality. In his conquest of the Sacred Realm, once he reached the Temple of Light, He single-handedly killed all of his followers who had aided him in his expedition, so that he could claim the Triforce uncontested. He is also culturally inclined, playing a pipe organ with great skill, as seen in Ocarina of Time, where he plays his own theme throughout Link's attack in his castle. Ganon also possesses an arrogant sense of entitlement. He believes himself to be the only one worthy of ruling the Kingdom of Hyrule. His pride is also shown when fighting enemies. Despite being more than capable of defeating most enemies in combat, Ganon instead relies on his minions to defeat them. Apparently, he chooses to only fight opponents he deems worthy, such as Link. Ganon is also an extremely destructive being. Conquest and destruction seems to be one and the same to him, and examples of his rule have shown him willingly turning his dominion into a wicked place of terror and chaos and harming others with little care. He resents defiance from anybody, but seems to grudgingly respect Link's willingness to stand up to him in Ocarina of Time. Ganondorf was also implied to hold mental instability in 2 instances. The first was shortly after King Daphne's Nohansen Hyrule wished for Hyrule and Ganondorf to be flooded completely, where he proceeded to engage in hysterical laughter as the land was being flooded permanently during the adult timeline. And the other time was when he proceeded to engage in similar hysterical laughter when witnessing Zelda try to scramble to aid the mortally wounded Queen Sonia shortly after he mortally wounded the latter, just before becoming the Demon King. Abilities. Even before gaining the Triforce of Power, Ganondorf was arguably one of the most powerful men in the entire land of Hyrule, largely due to his political position as the King of the Gerudo. Ganondorf was also an immensely powerful sorcerer with vast mystical resources. Additionally, Ganondorf has proven himself to be a skilled swordsman, as seen in the final battles between him and Link in The Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. He's also very physically strong, explained by his extremely tall height and bulky body. In Tears of the Kingdom, in Memories number 9, Sonia is caught by treachery. Sonia was killed by Ganondorf by a single punch in her back. Once Ganondorf gained the Triforce of Power, both his physical and mystical abilities were augmented by the essence of the goddess Din to godlike proportions, his power unrivaled by any mortal, for he ceased to be mortal in that moment. Becoming a monstrously powerful Demon King, Ganondorf became utterly unstoppable, conquering Hyrule with ease. He also implies that the Triforce of Power was sufficient enough to allow him to weaken any seals placed on him over time. As seen in the events of Twilight Princess, the Triforce of Power also grants Ganondorf near invulnerability. Using its power, he is capable of enduring mortal wounds, such as having his chest pierced by a sword during his attempted execution, and only the likes of the most powerful sacred weapons, such as the Master Sword, appear to be able to kill him. Even without access to his full capabilities in the Wind Waker, Ganondorf was able to cast a curse to keep the Great Sea in an endless stormy night. As seen in Twilight Princess, the Triforce of Power grants Ganondorf many more powers such as size manipulation and terrain alteration. While Ganondorf is not personally shown using many of these powers, he temporarily gifts the usurper Zant with some of them. Ganondorf also has an unnaturally long lifespan, having lived through ages of Hyrulean chronology. Ganondorf's dark magic, and possibly his position as the Demon King, grant him the power to create his armies of monsters and beasts. His power, with or without the Triforce, appears to grow over time. The sages in Arbiter's Grounds, when discussing his evil power, mention it being pure malice and hatred. As the Calamity Ganon, his very essence is known as the Malice, possibly meaning that his demonic magic and power is fueled as much by his own hatred as the Triforce, and his capacity for hatred is the only true limit on how powerful he can grow. The reincarnated Ganondorf, during the events of Four Swords Adventures, was largely similar to the original, although it is implied that he was weaker than the original, to the extent that he lacked the ability to cover Hyrule in darkness by the time he had been defeated and sealed in the Fourth Sword. In Breath of the Wild, Ganon is portrayed in a particularly dark way, even by his usual standards. The death and utter destruction he brought to Hyrule long before the events of the game were such that, for the first time in the whole Zelda series, he's known as the Calamity. His dark essence notably took over the very guardians of the kingdom and turned them against their creators, bringing forth the fall of Hyrule and the near death of Link himself. With his spirit imprisoned by Princess Zelda within Hyrule Castle, Ganon patiently tried to regenerate in a corporal form that was supposed to be shaped after Ganondorf's physical appearance. Because of Zelda's seal upon him, he was forced to pick up pieces and weapons of guardians here and there that he tried to amalgamate with his malice. As a result, Calamity Ganon is arguably the most terrifying creature ever seen in the series. Looking like a giant scorpion with spider legs, his combat abilities are somehow hampered by his grotesque and incomplete body. Built in spite of common sense, completely devoid of any magical powers, this artificial creation had no choice but to rely on what the Guardians had to offer. In Tears of the Kingdom, Ganondorf is depicted at his most formidable, even compared to his previous appearances in the whole Zelda series. Long before the events of the game, his power has increased beyond limits after he gained one of the secret stones, as demonstrated when he summoned his hordes of demons to take over Hyrule. With his minions, Ganondorf successfully submitted the free peoples one after the other, until King Rauru and all the sages finally faced him beneath Hyrule Castle. Even so, their combined strength was no match for the Demon King, and only Rauru's sacrifice ultimately saved his peers and Hyrule from complete destruction. When Ganondorf finally broke free from the seal 10,000 years later, his power was so great that he effortlessly shattered the Master Sword and nearly killed Link himself. Although still weakened by his millennial imprisonment, the Demon King proved to be a nuisance for Hyrule as he triggered several cataclysms that affected every major region of the kingdom. He was also omniscient, as demonstrated when he summoned the puppet with the appearance of Zelda to trick Link and the inhabitants of the kingdom. This nasty surprise also indirectly caused the death of Queen Sonia, and proved decisive in allowing Ganondorf to gain a virtually unlimited power. Last but not least, it is no secret that Ganondorf is an accomplished swordsman, but in Tears of the Kingdom, he proves to be even more redoubtable when using a spear, a club, and even a bow. Summoning his weapons from the gloom and constantly switching from one to the other, his surprisingly swift attacks deal massive damage, with gloom-based attacks literally taking away Link's maximum health permanently from the sheer evil fueling his weapons. And he also has many attacks Link can perform, such as Flurry Rush, and is even capable of blocking arrow shots by swiping his arm on impact, these feats unseen in the whole series. Names. Since the release of the original game, Ganon has had several different names. During the development of The Legend of Zelda, he was referred to as Gyuma Hakai, which is said to be derived from Journey to the West characters Chohakai and Gyoma. Before the game's release, the name was changed to Ganon, an accurate katakana representation of different Roman spellings. Both the Japanese and the English language versions of The Legend of Zelda spell the character's name as Ganon, with 2 N's. The game's English manual instead opted for the spelling Ganon with 1 N. This disparity gave rise to the notion that Ganon, with 2 N's, was a misspelling introduced during the translation of the first installment's in-game text, inspiring the sight and phrase Ganon Band. The misspelling theory is contradicted by the Japanese versions of The Adventure of Link and A Link to the Past, whose in-game texts kept the spelling of Ganon with 2 N's. Ever since the English release of The Adventure of Link, official Nintendo translations have consistently used the spelling Ganon. However, it was not until 1992 that the translators completely settled on the Ganon spelling. While A Link to the Past was in development, the English draft script still referred to the character as Ganondorf with 2 N's and Ganon with 2 N's, implying that the localization team comprised of Daniel Ausen and Hiroyuki Yamada deliberated a long time about which spelling to use. The first instance of the Ganon spelling also being used by the Japanese developers is in the source code of Ocarina of Time. With the Japanese release of Super Smash Bros. Melee, the games finally adopted the official English spelling for the Japanese audience. Although the etymology of Link's name is commonly known, the original inspiration behind the name Ganon has yet to be revealed by the Nintendo developers. When A Link to the Past was released, Ganon's human form, Ganondorf, was introduced, although only in name, as Ocarina of Time fully reveals him afterwards. In the Western manual of A Link to the Past for the Super NES, Ganondorf was referred to by full name Ganondorf Dragmire. Similarly, Ganon was also referred to in the manual by an alias Mandrag Ganon, which means Ganon of the Enchanted Thieves. These names do not appear in A Link to the Past itself, in its re-releases or remakes, or in other games, though the name Ganondorf Dragmire is used in Ganondorf's character profile on the official Zelda website. According to Hyrule Historia, the name Ganondorf refers to his human form, while the Ganon is both a nickname and the name given to him when he transforms into a boar-like beast. There have been several cases in the Legend of Zelda series in which characters, such as the King of Red Lions or Zant, refer to Ganondorf as Ganon. In Breath of the Wild, Ganon is known as Calamity Ganon, Unified Timeline, Skyward Sword. Although Ganon is not in Skyward Sword, his origins are revealed. He is the incarnation of Demise's hatred and is thus destined to eternally reincarnate to pursue world domination, as well as those with the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero. Ocarina of Time. Several years prior to Ocarina of Time, the Hyrulean Civil War ended with the unification of the various races of Hyrule under the royal family. This included the Gerudo, with Ganondorf as their king, swearing fealty to the king of Hyrule. This brought the Gerudo Desert under Hyrule's control. In truth, Ganondorf only did this so he could move freely throughout the country. During the events of Ocarina of Time, Ganondorf is striving to conquer the lands of Hyrule and obtain the Triforce. In order to access the Triforce within the Sacred Realm, Ganondorf sought the 3 spiritual stones from the Kokiri, Gorons, and Zoras. When they refused to hand them over, he placed a death curse upon the Great Deku Tree and Lord Jabu Jabu, and blocked off the Dongo's cavern with a gigantic boulder. At the same time, he pledged false allegiance to the King of Hyrule to gain his trust. Princess Zelda, however, senses the pure evil within Ganondorf and asks for Link's aid to prevent Ganondorf from obtaining the Triforce. Ganondorf eventually betrays the king and assaults Hyrule Castle while Link gathers the 3 spiritual stones. The young hero returns in time to see Zelda and Impa flee while being pursued by Ganondorf on his horse. When Ganondorf demands Link to tell him in which direction the two had fled, Link refuses and is attacked by the King of the Gerudo, who proclaims he will soon rule the world. When Link shortly thereafter opens the entrance to the Sacred Realm, Ganondorf sneakily follows him and seizes the opportunity to obtain the Triforce, with partial success. As he touches the Triforce, however, it's split into 3 pieces, leaving Ganondorf with only the Triforce of Power. During the 7 years Link was in suspended animation, Ganondorf conquered the Kingdom of Hyrule, transforming the feudal-style Hyrule Castle into Ganon's Castle, a tiered, near cylindrical skyscraper, resting on a floating island that hovered above a large lake of lava. He had the castle town completely decimated, left in ruins, and populated by the re-dead, causing many Hylians to flee to Kakariko Village. As Hyrule's new king, Ganondorf gained even more knowledge regarding the Triforce. Because his heart was not in balance, he was only bestowed 1/3 of the element, the Triforce of Power. With all of the luxury and power of the subdued kingdom at his disposal, the Sorcerer Evil King is able to wait patiently for the moment when the 2 remaining Triforce Keepers, Link and Zelda, would reveal themselves. Eventually, he finds them in the Temple of Time, where he kidnaps Princess Zelda, who had evaded his pursuit for 7 years, and challenges Link to come save her. The 3 Triforce possessors meet again in Ganon's castle, where the final battle ensues. When Link reaches the top of the tower, he finds Zelda confined in a pink crystalline enclosure floating above it. Ganondorf taunts the young hero and engages him in battle, where Link is able to defeat the tyrant with the aid of the light arrows and the Master Sword. Wounded and using the last of his strength, Ganondorf tries to make his castle collapse to kill Link and Zelda, but the 2 manage to escape safely. However, the exhausted Ganondorf still lives, and uses the essence of the Triforce of Power to transform into a bestial monstrosity called Ganon, his true form. Despite his massive size and clever tactics, Link manages to defeat him using the Master Sword and assistance from the power of the 7 sages. Ganondorf is then sealed into the void of the evil realm, where he cannot harm Hyrule or lay his hands on the remaining pieces of the Triforce. As he is sealed in the Sacred Realm, Ganondorf claims that when he breaks the seal, he will destroy Link and Zelda's descendants, knowing that he will have the opportunity as long as he possesses the Triforce of Power. Downfall Timeline. The Downfall Timeline is a timeline in which Link, the hero of time, despite his best efforts, was defeated by Ganondorf in the final battle. Ganondorf obtained the full Triforce, but was sealed within the Dark World by Princess Zelda and the other awakened sages, taking the Triforce with him. A Link to the Past. A Link to the Past gives an altered version of the events of Ocarina of Time. When Ganondorf discovered the lost knowledge of how to enter the Sacred Realm where the Triforce lay, he killed his minions in order to be the only one able to claim the Triforce. When he laid his hands upon it, the Sacred Realm changed into the Dark World, and he was transformed into a boar-like demon Ganon. Ganon waged war against Hyrule, and in a fierce battle, the Knights of Hyrule engaged Ganon while the sages sealed the entrance to the Dark World, casting Ganon into it. Many years later, Ganon uses the wizard Aghanim to break free of the Dark World. Aghanim manages to win the trust of the King of Hyrule, and eventually takes control of Hyrule itself. He attempts to break the seal on Ganon by sending the 7 maidens, descendants of the 7 sages, into the Dark World. However, he is temporarily stopped when Link helps the final maiden, Princess Zelda, to escape. While Link is trying to acquire the Master Sword to defeat Aghanim, the wizard finds Princess Zelda and sends her to the Dark World. This breaks the seal, and allows Ganon's influence to fully spread across the Light World as well. After suffering a defeat by Link, Aghanim uses his powers to transport Link into the Dark World. After rescuing all of the maidens from their imprisonment in the Dark World, Link faces Aghanim again in the Dark World, where the young hero successfully destroys him. After the battle with Aghanim, the shadow of Ganon rises from his body, turns into a bat, and flies to the Pyramid of Power. There, Link faces the King of Thieves, and even though Ganon wields the might of the full Triforce and the Trident, Link manages to destroy him with the Master Sword and the Silver Arrows. Link's Awakening. Ganon did not appear in Link's Awakening, but during the final battle, the final boss takes on a form known as the Shadow of Ganon. During the final battle, the Shadow Nightmares take on the form of various monsters from Link's past. One of these is the form of Aghanim, Ganon's alter ego, while the fourth is of Ganon himself. While not the true Ganon, This is the memory of Link's battle with Ganon in A Link to the Past, and as such, attacks in a similar manner, using his trident and attacking with blazing bats. Unlike the real Ganon, the silver arrows are not needed for Link to defeat it, but he will have to use spin attacks or the Pegasus boots to cause damage. Unlike the other shadows up to this point, once defeated, the shadow of Ganon will make the cry normally used for when a boss has been completely destroyed. Despite this, the battle will continue, as the shadows take on another form. Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages. In the linked ending of Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages, it is revealed that the events of the two games were started by Twin Rova in an attempt to resurrect Ganon via the Dark Rites. The ritual required that 3 flames were lit: the Flame of Destruction, the Flame of Sorrow, and the Flame of Despair. The Flame of Destruction is lit when General Onox throws the Seasons of Holodrum into chaos, while the Flame of Sorrow is lit when Varen caused great misfortune to the people of Labruna by using the powers of Nehru the Oracle. With 2 flames lit, the twin Rova sisters capture Princess Zelda, causing the despair of the people to light the 3rd flame, the Flame of Despair. Twin Rova intended to sacrifice Zelda for Ganon's rebirth, but Link managed to slay them before the ritual finished, and thus, the twin Rova sisters were forced to sacrifice themselves to awaken Ganon. Because of this, the ritual was incomplete and Ganon became a mindless beast, although he did demonstrate limited thought, just as he was defeated by Link. Ambiguously canon information. Ancient Stone Tablets. 6 years after the events of A Link to the Past, Ganon returns in Ancient Stone Tablets. After monsters attack Hyrule and a mysterious hero of light appears from the sky, a quest to obtain 8 ancient Hylian stone tablets eventually reveals that Ganon, the Demon King, had managed to keep his lingering spirit alive despite his body's destruction at the hands of Link. His evil power had slowly been growing in a rebuilt Ganon's tower, with his ultimate aim to obtain the power of the Hero of Light so he could be fully reborn. Ganon himself had drawn the Hero of Light into Hyrule, but he meets his hubris when he is destroyed again due to a combination of the Golden Sword and silver arrows, both wielded by the Hero of Light. A Link Between Worlds. Ganon appears to Link in a nightmare, ominously hinting that he would soon return. Later, after capturing each of the 7 sages and portraits, the evil wizard Yuga uses their power in order to resurrect Ganon from the darkness, where he was sealed after his previous defeat. After resurrecting him, Yuga joins with Ganon, taking on a form which combines attributes of both the evil sorcerers. However, before Yuga Ganon can destroy Link, he is stopped by Hilda, who sends Link on a quest to reawaken the 7 sages and gain the Triforce of Courage. Once the Triforce of Courage is obtained, Impa reveals that Ganon is returning and that Link must stop him. She then tells him that he must head to Lorule Castle and confront with the Demon King to stop him once and for all. When Link returns and discovers that Hilda has lied to him, she summons Yuga Ganon to fight Link and obtain the Triforce of Courage from him, but Yuga Ganon is defeated. Hilda asks him for the Triforce of Power, but he reveals his plan to use the Triforce to become a god and turns her into a painting. He then bolsters his power by taking the Triforce of Wisdom from Hilda, but in the end, he is destroyed by Link, though Ganon's soul survives. The Legend of Zelda. Despite Yuga Ganon's apparent destruction at the hands of Link in A Link Between Worlds, Ganon returns to life sometime prior to The Legend of Zelda, devoid of intelligence. He leads an invasion on the small kingdom of Lesser Hyrule and manages to obtain the Triforce of Power. Before he can obtain the Triforce of Wisdom, Princess Zelda is able to break it into 8 pieces and scatters it throughout Hyrule, then sends her attendant Impa away to search for help. Ganon captures Zelda and holds her hostage in his lair, deep in level 9 under Spectacle Rock, and sends his minions after Impa. Link, having outwitted his underlings and learned of the perils that the land was under, takes up a sword and goes alone to assemble the pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom. Using it, he enters level 9 and shines it upon the King of Evil's hiding place. Ganon fights ruthlessly with his seemingly invincible technique of darkness, but Link is able to vanquish him with his blade by using the silver arrows to deliver the final blow, reducing Ganon to ashes and revealing the Triforce of Power. BS, The Legend of Zelda. Non-canon information. In BS, The Legend of Zelda, Ganon uses a variation of his A Link to the Past look. He wears a red coat, skull necklace, and wields the trident, although appears with grey skin rather than blue. He laughs when he first appears and fights using the same method that he used in the original version of the game. The Adventure of Link. Many years prior to both The Legend of Zelda and The Adventure of Link, an offshoot/follower of Ganon, only known as the Magician, attempted to gain the location of the Triforce of Courage by manipulating the Prince of Hyrule. The Magician dies, casting a spell on Princess Zelda to make her fall asleep for eternity in revenge for her not revealing the Triforce of Courage's location. Years later, in The Adventure of Link, the evil power left behind by the Vaal heart of Ganon was causing chaos and ruin in Hyrule, as Ganon's army makes an attempt to revive him by sprinkling Link's blood onto Ganon's ashes, but this method would ultimately fail. In the ending scenario where Link is killed during his journey, Ganon's minions are able to collect his blood and sprinkling it onto Ganon's ashes, reviving him. As such, Ganon only physically appears on the Game Over screen. Child Timeline. The Child Timeline is the timeline that follows Link after being sent back to his original time following the defeat of Ganondorf by the Hero of Time in the final battle. He warns Princess Zelda and the current King of Hyrule of the tragic future that awaited the kingdom involving Ganondorf if nothing was to be done. Twilight Princess. Prior to the events of Twilight Princess, Ganondorf's true intentions were exposed, and he was captured, put on trial, and sentenced to execution by the sages. While they managed to severely wound him by impaling him with the Sword of the Six Sages, the Triforce of Power activated at that moment, and thus they could not kill him. Using the power granted by his Triforce piece, he manages to free himself from his chains and kills the Sage of Water as well. Knowing no better solution, the sages open the gate to the Twilight Realm and send Ganondorf through it. There, he promptly revitalized himself using the lingering anguish and hatred from among the Twilight that managed to bleed through the Twilight Realm's dimensional fabric. He influences Zant, who had been denied the throne of the Twilight Realm, to seize control and access Hyrule again. Ganondorf grants Zant a fraction of his power in return for the opportunity to escape the Twilight Realm. After Link defeats Zant, Ganondorf and the young hero meet atop Hyrule Castle, where he is found sitting on Princess Zelda's throne, as Zelda's body lies in a niche in the same room. During the final battle, Ganondorf possesses Zelda by turning into Twilight. Using Zelda as a puppet, he attacks Link relentlessly, until Link forces his spirit out of Zelda's body. Ganondorf then takes his bestial form, Ganon, becoming an immensely powerful boar. Taking advantage of Ganon's blind rage, Link outwits him, and defeats Ganon by striking the wound left by the sages with the Master Sword. Ganondorf then takes on the form of an immense veil of fire in the shape of his disembodied head. Midna valiantly resolves to fight Ganondorf using the Twilight magic housed within the fused shadow, teleporting Link and Zelda to the safety of Hyrule Field. Midna, transforming into an enormous Twilight arachnoid, attacks Ganondorf, with the ensuing battle destroying the castle. However, Midna was no match for Ganondorf, and was promptly defeated by the Gerudo King. Ganondorf emerges from the ruins of Hyrule Castle on horseback, triumphantly holding aloft the fused shadow fragment that Midna wore, and after crushing it in his hand, he charges towards Link and Zelda. Zelda entreats the light spirits of the realm to lend her their power in the form of arrows of light. Mounting Epona, Link and Zelda pursue, assailing Ganondorf with a hail of arrows. Ganondorf is momentarily staggered, falling from his stead, but he recovers surprisingly quickly, and confines himself and Link in a makeshift arena where the two engage in a sword duel. After besting him in a sword-to-sword struggle, Link plunges the Master Sword into Ganondorf's open wound. He does not die immediately, but only when the Triforce of Power fades completely from his hand does he finally succumb. Ganondorf sees a vision of Zant's neck breaking. Then Ganondorf's eyes gloss over and he dies. Immediately before his death, however, Ganondorf implies that future battles between his reincarnation and their descendants will occur and warns them that the history of light and shadow will be written in blood. Four Swords Adventures. Hundreds of years later, in Four Swords Adventures, Ganon is reincarnated following his death in Twilight Princess. In this game, Ganondorf is referred to as a desert nomad, recently expelled from the Gerudo tribe by breaking their taboo and exploring the desert pyramid as part of his plan to usurp the power of others and coat Hyrule in darkness. He steals the trident from the pyramid and the Dark Mirror, which he uses to summon Shadow Link and his kin from the forest. He uses him to trick Link into releasing Vati from the Fourth Sword to serve as a distraction. Ganondorf then utilized the power of the trident to hunt down and defeat the Knights of Hyrule and transform them into demons, turning the royal jewels into gateways to the Dark World. Ganon also absorbs the power of the imprisoned Shrine Maidens. At the end of the game, Ganon appears as the final boss as a twist ending, fought in the Dark World underneath the Tower of Winds, where he is defeated after Link fires a light arrow into Zelda's ball of light that pierces him. He is then sealed away in the Fourth Sword as a new prisoner. Aside from the reincarnated Ganon, the original Ganon's hatred and malice transcending time and space was responsible for the creation of the various Shadow Links via the Dark Mirror, with the intention of getting Link to break the seal on Vati. Adult Timeline. The Adult Timeline is a timeline that follows the events after Link is being sent back to his original time, following Ganondorf's defeat at the hands of the Hero of Time in the final battle. Ganondorf is sealed within the Sacred Realm by the Seven Sages, but, with Link sent back in time, the world is left without a hero. The Wind Waker. Long before the events of the Wind Waker, but well after Ocarina of Time, Ganondorf managed to escape from his seal and wreak havoc in Hyrule once more. Climbing from the earth in his beast form Ganon, he attacked the kingdom of Hyrule and easily took control of it. No hero appeared this time as the gods were forced to flood Hyrule in order to stop Ganon. He was referenced in legends dating millennia later as the Emperor of the Dark Realm. However, Ganon breaks free again, rising up from his ocean prison, and subsequently begins to rebuild his army. Still wanting to obtain the Triforce, he sends one of his minions, the Helmarok King, on a search for young girls with pointy ears, hoping to find Princess Zelda, the bearer of the Triforce of Wisdom. He sends two more of his minions, Jalhala and Mulgara, to kill the sages of Earth and Wind, Larudo and Fado, so the Master Sword doesn't have the power to repel evil. Among the girls kidnapped is Link's sister Aril, and thus Link sets off on his adventure to rescue her. Link finds Ganondorf's hideout, the Forsaken Fortress, where Ganondorf had Link thrown far into the ocean after being caught by the Helmarok King. Later, it's revealed that Ganondorf has limited magic strength, for his powers were sealed away by the gods with the aid of the Master Sword, which by that time had already been weakened by the deaths of the sages of Earth and Wind. However, without this knowledge, Link himself takes the Master Sword, and thus removes the only barrier restraining Ganondorf's power. Soon afterwards, atop the Forsaken Fortress, as Ganondorf reveals that the Master Sword is dull, as its power to banish evil is forever gone, having planned for that outcome, Link and the pirate captain, Tetra, narrowly escape safely with the help of the sky spirit Valu and the Rito before Ganondorf can seize Tetra, who he finds is actually Princess Zelda and the keeper of the Triforce of Wisdom. After this, Zelda is hidden inside the underwater castle in Hyrule, and Link begins his quest to reawaken the Master Sword, whose power had vanished since Ganondorf had murdered the sages in charge of keeping the power within the Sacred Blade. Once Link finally achieves his goals of finding the Triforce of Courage and restoring the Master Sword to its former glory to become the Hero of the Winds, Ganondorf locates their haven and consequently captures Zelda, whom he takes to his underwater tower. Link finds Zelda unharmed, lying in a bed, sleeping, with Ganondorf watching over her in her dreams. However, before Link has any chance to approach, Ganondorf unleashes a bewitched giant puppet of his beast form, which Link defeats. Ganondorf finally reappears to challenge Link, and with Zelda in his arm, he rises to the rooftop of the tower. Soon after Link reaches the top of the tower, as Ganondorf speaks to him about his reasons for desperately searching for the Triforce pieces, revealing a little of his origins from the harsh Gerudo Desert, and his desire to take over the green landscapes of Hyrule, when he declares that he already has in his possession the Triforce of Wisdom, as Ganondorf suddenly quickly rushes against Link and delivers swift, hard punches to the face that leave Link half-conscious and knocking the Master Sword out of reach, as Ganondorf, using his Triforce of Power, summons the two missing Triforce pieces from Link and Zelda and reforms the full Triforce. Nevertheless, right before Ganondorf is able to touch the Triforce and make his wish come true of conquering Hyrule, King Daphnis Nohansen Hyrule, the last king of Hyrule, appears to touch the Triforce first and makes the wish of permanently washing away the ancient land of Hyrule. The Triforce disappears and water starts pouring from the protective barrier into the land of Hyrule as Ganondorf laughs scornfully. Link wakes up at that point and Zelda approaches him holding the Master Sword for Link to engage Ganondorf in one last battle. Ultimately, with Zelda's aid, Ganondorf is defeated when Link deals the final blow by plunging the Master Sword straight into Ganondorf's head, turning him into stone and killing him. Immediately before this death, however, Ganondorf, with slight satisfaction, referenced the brutal winds that had long plagued the Gerudo. His body remains atop the tower under the Great Sea with the Master Sword in his forehead, as for the ocean finally drowns Hyrule under the Great Sea. With his death, Ganondorf was freed of his obsessive desire for the Triforce. Phantom Hourglass. Ganon is not encountered or fought in Phantom Hourglass due to his defeat in Hyrule, now beneath the Great Sea, at the end of the Wind Waker, but Link's duel with an evil king is mentioned in the intro. The intro also had Ganondorf appearing twice, first while abducting Zelda, and lastly while dueling Link. In this version, unlike in Wind Waker, he fights Link unarmed. The Great Calamity. Ganondorf and the Secret Stones. At the founding of Hyrule's iteration in Breath of the Wild, a later incarnation of Ganondorf was born into the Gerudo tribe as leader. He attempted to conquer Hyrule by sheer force via a Molduga stampede, but his plans were thwarted by the Secret Stones in possession of the royal family. Upon witnessing their incredible power, the Gerudo changed his strategy and understood that he would have to fool his enemies. This is why he went to Hyrule Castle with the Gerudo delegation to pledge allegiance to King Rauru, a necessary humiliation in an attempt to gain his trust and become closer to the royal family. During the meeting, Ganondorf humbly expressed his regrets about all the peace offers that have been rejected or ignored by his people, and smoothed Rauru by complimenting his union with the queen. He was a good actor, and the king praised Ganondorf for his change of heart, before letting him go at the end of the audience. While the King of Hyrule effectively secured peace in the ongoing war between the Gerudos and the Hylians, Ganondorf had other plans in his twisted mind. Unbeknownst to the royal family, he realized that Queen Sonia too was in possession of a secret stone, and elaborated a plan to steal it from her. Birth of the Demon King. It wasn't long before he put his plan into effect, creating a doppelganger of a time-displaced Zelda, whom he noticed at the delegation earlier. He had the doppelganger lure Sonia to a secluded area to discuss something in private in order to assassinate her. However, Sonia anticipated Ganondorf would try such a plan, and countered with the real Zelda deflecting the thrown knife. Despite this, however, Ganondorf nevertheless capitalized on the resulting distraction and promptly mortally wounded her, in cold blood right in front of Zelda, much to her horror. Ganondorf robbed the queen from her stone and used it to enhance his own powers. The Demon King was born. After Rauru noticed Sonia's corpse, the new Demon King tauntingly blamed Rauru for quote-unquote taking the secret stone's power for granted, end quote, enraging the Zonai monarch enough to attempt to attack him. However, he was no match to Ganondorf, forcing Rauru to have himself, Zelda, and a dying Sonia retreat just before Ganondorf attacked with a wave of malice. He then wasted no time to tear Hyrule asunder in his desire for conquest. The Imprisoning War. The surviving sages led by King Rauru, the founder king of Hyrule, cornered him, but he proved too powerful to be defeated easily. Rauru was ultimately forced to sacrifice himself by using his Zonai arm to pin Ganondorf in place, with Zelda aiding at a critical moment by deflecting weapons towards Ganondorf earlier in a similar manner to the earlier encounter with the doppelganger, distracting the Demon King long enough for Rauru to close in on him. Having impaled the Demon King with his magic arm, he proceeded to absorb Ganondorf's power and forcefully bound the evil to himself. King Rauru used his last breath to promise Ganondorf that one day, a young swordsman would come to finish what he had started. Ganondorf sarcastically retaliated that he looked forward to meeting him, before falling into a millennial sleep, which put an end to what would become known as the Imprisoning War. He would remain in this tomb for countless ages, his threat progressively forgotten by the future generations. The First Calamity. 10,000 years prior to the Breath of the Wild, Ganondorf's hatred manifested for the first time as Calamity Ganon and attacked Hyrule. Few details are known about this cataclysm, but the kingdom had prepared itself for this moment and was able to sustain the calamity and the swarm of demons that accompanied their master. Ganon did not expect to face not only the hero and the princess of that time, but also a whole army of guardians and above all, the divine beasts created by Sheikah. Obviously, these machines did not have the power to take down Ganon himself, but they proved decisive in containing his demons, thus preventing them from taking over Hyrule. The calamity was ultimately vanquished and contained once more, but it was not going down that easily. More importantly, Ganon was cunning and now wary of this formidable armada he failed to destroy. Thousands of years would pass in the blink of an eye, and his return would bring forth the complete destruction of Hyrule. The Second Calamity. 100 years prior to the events of the Breath of the Wild, a prophecy warned of the return of Calamity Ganon. Hoping to prepare in the same fashion as their ancestors, the people of Hyrule began working to locate and excavate the divine beasts and guardians. 4 champions from each of Hyrule's races were chosen to pilot the divine beast of their people, and the restoration of the mechanical army seemed to be a phenomenal success. Indeed, according to the legend, the Sheikah built a massive army of mechanical protectors called guardians to aid the hero and the princess. 4 massive mobile fortresses, known as divine beasts, served as the centerpieces of this army. Meanwhile, Princess Zelda worked to awaken her sealing powers alongside a young knight, Link, who had been appointed as her protector. Zelda was determined to awaken her power and prayed at the 3 springs of the goddesses in Hyrule, but her efforts were met with failure. Minutes after she had finished praying at the Spring of Wisdom, the Calamity broke his seal and rose up around the castle, triggering the Second Calamity and setting into motion the events of Breath of the Wild. In a move that surprised everyone, he managed to corrupt the entire Guardian army with its malice and turn them against Hyrule. Even the divine beasts, with their pilots slain, fell under the control of incarnations of Ganon's malice. With their strongest weapons turned against them, Hyrule was laid to ruin and Link grievously wounded, requiring him to sleep in a Sheikah healing chamber for 100 years. Princess Zelda went to confront the Calamity Ganon on her own and managed to seal him once more, though this required her to also become his prisoner to maintain the seal. Breath of the Wild. Now known as the Calamity, Ganon is introduced in the Breath of the Wild as the main antagonist of the game. Calamity Ganon is the very embodiment of Ganondorf's psyche, so powerful and intense that it can actually materialize into a vessel. Unbeknownst to the protagonists, Ganondorf has been sealed beneath Hyrule Castle 10,000 years prior to the events of the game, and has remained there ever since. He was seemingly trapped there forever, but even so, The evil within his body was so much that it emanated from him in the form of malice. Not only that, his evil spirit has now been contained as well by Princess Zelda since the last 100 years, though she didn't prove to be strong enough to actually defeat Ganon for good. With Ganondorf sealed deep beneath the royal domain, and his demonic spirit checked by Zelda within the sanctum, Calamity Ganon was forcefully bound to Hyrule Castle, though its essence could still be sensed and seen in the area. Calamity Ganon, Scourge of Hyrule Castle. Throughout Link's journey during the events of Breath of the Wild, the Calamity Spirit can be seen swarming around Hyrule Castle, where Zelda is using her power to keep him tethered there. When Link finally arrives at the sanctum of Hyrule Castle, Ganon is found hibernating within a cocoon, and appears as a manifestation of various guardian parts and malice grotesquely fused together. Dark Beast Ganon, Hatred and Malice Incarnate. When Calamity Ganon is defeated, Ganon's demonic spirit escapes to Hyrule Field and manifests into Dark Beast Ganon, the incarnation of malice and hatred. He takes the form of a gigantic boar, similar to one of Ganondorf's form in Twilight Princess, but is consumed by malice. Princess Zelda reveals that at this point, Ganon has refused to give up on resurrecting, and intends to release the full force of his wrath onto the world. After Zelda bequeaths Link with the Bow of Light and guides him to several of Ganon's weak points, Ganon returns to his ethereal form and attempts to launch one last desperate attack before being sealed away by Zelda. Tears of the Kingdom. For the first time in years, Ganondorf himself finally returns in Tears of the Kingdom. Also known as the Demon King, he is introduced as the main antagonist of the game. At the start of the game's story, Link and Zelda are investigating a strange phenomenon known as gloom, which was seeping from the bowels below Hyrule Castle and causing people to fall ill, along with their weapons being decayed. Intent on investigating the rumors, the two discovered long-forgotten ruins deep below the castle. Upon reaching the end of the ruins, Link and Zelda discovered a petrified body being the source of the gloom, and a strange glowing hand holding it down subdued. The hand's energy is eventually spent, and the petrified figure opens his eyes, and Zelda is immediately attacked by an enormous blast of gloom that Link intercepts, causing his body to be filled with gloom and his power subsequently depleted. On top of this, the Master Sword is instantly decayed and Link's arm is destroyed. A broken shard of the Master Sword manages to cut the petrified Ganondorf's cheek, but it visibly takes less than a few seconds for the cut to be healed, with Ganondorf mockingly referring to the Master Sword as fragile. Quote unquote, Rauru places faith in you, and that was all you could do? Ganondorf to Link. The mysterious being then taunted the sword that seals the darkness for being unable to do more, while also referring to Link and Zelda by name, expressing familiarity with them. Assuring both that they would be unable to contend with his power, the man initiates an event known as Upheaval, which causes Hyrule Castle to rise from the ground into the sky. Quote unquote, My power will sweep across this land. You need but to wait the inevitable. End quote. Ganondorf to his foes at Hyrule Castle. In his lair known as Gloom's Origin, the Gerudo awaited the arrival of Link. During this time, he operated via proxy with both Gloom as well as various Phantom Ganons, one of which posed as Zelda to cover for her disappearance. He then telepathically contacted Link, as well as the four sages at Hyrule Castle after his unit of Phantom Ganons were defeated and unveiled his true identity as Ganondorf, and briefly supplied them with a vision, showing a taste of what he ultimately had in store for Hyrule. As he was still recovering his powers, however, he disengaged them after this. When the hero of Hyrule finally faced the mummy once more, Ganondorf briefly exposed his views of what Hyrule would look like under his dark rule. Using the ancestral power of the Secret Stone he stole from Queen Sonia long ago, he finally regained his original appearance. Demon King Ganondorf. The Menace Unleashed. The Demon King now stood proudly in front of Link, dressed in a superb kimono embellished with Gerudo patterns, a katana on his left hand. He was less of the king he pretended to be and more of the warrior priest. The two enemies then began a duel of fates, and Ganondorf displayed his mastery of the sword, fighting with swift and surgical precision. It should be noted that his sword charges are reminiscent of the final fight in Twilight Princess. Ganondorf proves to be a versatile opponent, as he occasionally summons a giant mace to try to crush Link, in a style strangely reminiscent of Girahim's final fight in Skyward Sword, as well as a bow, demonstrating adeptness with various weapon types. Despite his enormous physique, the Demon King displays a surprising agility, being able to dodge many of Link's attacks with well-executed backflips. However, he was still holding back his true power. After having sustained a substantial amount of damage, Ganondorf used the power of the Secret Stone once more to reveal his ultimate self before the real showdown with his archenemy. Master of the Secret Stone. Now more of a demon than a human, Ganondorf strangely looked like Demise itself, with a fiery red mane and towering stature. Despite his bestial appearance, he fully retained his intelligence and ability to taunt Link. To display the extent of his new power, he seized the opportunity to extend his health bar far beyond the standard limit, potentially catching even the player off guard. Then Ganondorf summoned 4 phantoms to assist him and overwhelm Link. stacking him against overwhelming odds. Sarcastically promising his opponent that this time he would lose more than just an arm, he proceeded in engaging the wielder of the Master Sword. As his phantoms were advancing toward Link as well, they were soon all engaged in battle by Link's companions, leaving Ganondorf on his own. This time, the Demon King had more than a trick up his sleeve, as he easily dodged Link's flurry rushes, making the duel much more technical and complicated for the latter. Once his health had been reduced by half, Ganondorf proceeds into his next phase. He sucked the very essence of the four phantoms, gathered their dark power within himself, and brutally unleashed a power shockwave that knocked out of commission the companions of Link. He then summoned his katana and gratified Link with a satisfied smile, daring him to attack. His attacks in this phase are as fast and unpredictable as ever, as demonstrated by his mastery of the bow. Demon Dragon. Draconified Demon King. After a grueling battle, Ganondorf was ultimately bested by Link. Furious that a mere mortal like Link could best him, he declared defiantly that his rule has yet to come and Link won't be able to stand in his way. Resorting to drastic measures to defeat Link and subject Hyrule to an endless night, he removed Sonia's secret stone from his forehead and committed the forbidden act of draconification, fully acknowledging that this will mean sacrificing everything, including his body and mind. He then laughed as a stream of malice engulfed the entire area. Unleashing his full potential, Ganondorf became the Calamity himself, and promptly grabbed Link in his maw, before leaving the pit and ascending to the surface. The power granted to him by the secret stone seemed to have no limits. As the evil spirit finally emerged from beneath Hyrule Castle and started swarming around it, the malice progressively materialized into a full body, revealing Calamity Ganon to be a gigantic black dragon. With Link still stuck in his maw, it seemed that the draconified Demon King was about to prevail, but the Light Dragon, actually Zelda, who earlier committed draconification in a sacrificial effort to ensure the Master Sword was returned to Link in the future, then rushed at the Demon Dragon, with Link taking the opportunity to escape his jaws. Link and the Light Dragon then had a climactic aerial battle above Hyrule against the Demon Dragon, with the latter ultimately being vanquished, taking the Demon King with him and freeing the world from his biggest threat. Other appearances. Ganon is also featured in other media, including comics based on the games, animated shows, and Super Smash Bros. Series. Although his appearance varies from the main series, Ganon is still the wielder of the Triforce of Power, who seeks to rule Hyrule by using the power of the Sacred Relic, fighting against Princess Zelda and Link to reach his goal. Ganon has also appeared in Animal Crossing New Leaf. He can be summoned through Wisp by using the Ganondorf, Bokoblin, or 8-bit Link amiibo. Ganon's swords. Although they go unnamed throughout the Legend of Zelda series, Ganon has several swords that he can often use in addition to his trident. They are inscribed with various pictures or writings depending on the game. Ganon wields a sword for the first time in Ocarina of Time. In the final battle, he wields two large golden blades against Link. Ganondorf is seen wielding a pair of swords again in the Wind Waker during the final battle, which is what he uses in his offensive strategy. They are engraved with the names Kotake and Kume, his surrogate mothers from Ocarina of Time. Later on in Twilight Princess, Ganondorf wields the Sword of the Six Sages, a weapon that the sages tried to use against him in an attempt to kill him. The Sword of the Six Sages serve as Ganondorf's weapon in the final battle against Link. As Calamity Ganon, he wields a number of energy blades similar to Guardian Scouts and his elemental avatars. In Tears of the Kingdom, the Demon King Ganondorf wields an ornate katana with a dark blade, a weapon he uses in his final battle against Link. Non-canon appearances of a sword-wielding Ganondorf include one of Ganondorf's victory poses and smash attacks in the Smash Bros. Series, and the Space World 2000 demo, which included a sword fight between Link and Ganondorf. This sword was much bulkier than the swords he uses in the main series, and had a rounded tip. Ganondorf also uses a sword in his battle with Link in the Ocarina of Time manga. This sword is capable of having Ganondorf's evil magic channeled through it. He also wields two great swords in Hyrule Warriors, the Swords of Despair. They can be upgraded to the Swords of Darkness and the Swords of Demise. Trivia. Topaz is Ganon's favorite gemstone. In Ocarina of Time, he decorates his armor and weapons with them. In Tears of the Kingdom, the traditional gemstone adorning Ganondorf's forehead is replaced by a secret stone, which became the source of his unlimited power. After Twilight Princess came out in 2006, Ganondorf would not appear again in a Zelda mainline game before Tears of the Kingdom, which was released in 2023, 17 years later. In addition, it's also been 17 years since Ganondorf, Link, and Zelda all appeared in the same game, explaining why Ganondorf's return in the series was met with exceptional enthusiasm among the community. Ganondorf's design in Tears of the Kingdom is widely considered one of the most successful in comparison to the previous games. It basically combines the body from Ocarina of Time, the opulence from Twilight Princess, and the dress code from The Wind Waker with an undeniable Japanese touch. In the international NES version of The Adventure of Link, Ganon could be heard laughing in the game over screen. The laugh sound effect itself was reused from Bald Bull, Soda Popinski, and Mr. Sandman from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Due to a glitch, it is possible to defeat Ganon in A Link to the Past with the Master Sword instead of silver arrows. In The Wind Waker, according to the original Japanese text, the Master Sword was only sealing Ganon's minions and not actually his magic, as can be observed in-game. The shape of Ganondorf's ears have varied throughout the series. His initial appearance in Ocarina of Time's Child Timeline depicts him with rounded ears. After the time gap in which he was able to obtain the Triforce of Power, his ears became more pointed, similar to those of Hylian's. This detail was removed in the 3DS remake. Ganondorf retains his pointed ears in Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. In Ocarina of Time, Ganon plays his own theme on a pipe organ. In Twilight Princess, a similar effect occurs when Link progresses through Hyrule Castle, as the background music shifts from the Hyrule Castle theme to Ganon's theme. This makes Ganondorf one of a handful of characters to generate their own theme music, the others being Midna, Garim, and Yuga, all of whom hum their themes. Early artwork for Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages shows a design for Ganondorf, implying he was originally planned to appear in the games. According to the notes for the artwork, the image was meant to depict Ganondorf's phantom. Ganondorf is extremely tall in height. According to the Hyrule Historia, he is a whopping 230 centimeters tall, 7'6", in Ocarina of Time. His 1/4 scale model from First Four Figures, who used in-game data to faithfully recreate his appearance in Twilight Princess, stands at 23 inches tall, which indicates that he also stands at 7'6" in that game as well. Fierce deity Link in Majora's Mask appears to be the same height as Ganondorf. Zelda states that Ganon has given up on the reincarnation to fight his pure enraged form. However, the dialogue in the Japanese version appears to contradict this, as Zelda says that the form was born from his obsessive refusal to give up on revival. In order for both passages to be consistent, it can be assumed that Ganon has an obsessive refusal to give up on revival, but has given up on reincarnating into a more sane sapient form, and instead continues to revive himself in the form of a purely enraged being. Originally, Ganondorf, when defeated in Twilight Princess, gave a speech where he indicated Zelda and Link, and any who bore the marks of the Triforce, Wisdom, and Courage, respectively, are inevitably going to enter conflict with anyone with Ganondorf's bloodline due to it being preordained by the gods. This was largely excised in the final version with Ganondorf, instead merely assuring them that their conflict would end then and there, as the history of light and shadow will be written in blood, although the Hyrule Historia nonetheless made clear that a reincarnation of Ganondorf did indeed reappear. Demise's curse at the end of Skyward Sword resembled this cut speech. In an interview made during the time Ocarina of Time was undergoing development, script writer Toru Osawa indicated that Ganondorf had some redeemable traits despite being pure evil, similar to the character Rao from the anime and manga Fist of the North Star. Ganon's roars in the final battle of Ocarina of Time were reused from Queen Goma and Volvagia. In the original N64 version of Ocarina of Time, version 1.0 or version 1.1, Ganondorf can be seen coughing red blood when defeated, as well as during when Link stabbed him in the mouth for the finishing blow in his beast form. In later version 1.2 releases, it was changed to green, and in the 3DS remake, the Master Sword now hits Ganon in the forehead to make it less violent and avoid the risk of making the game teen-rated, as it was everyone, at the initial release. The remake, however, has Ocarina of Time 3D under the E10+, Everyone 10+ rating. The Iron Knuckle enemies seen in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, including the one with Naburo, as such in the former, share Ganondorf's voice, though they are supposed to be Gerudos inside the armor. Ironically, Ganondorf himself is a Gerudo, a male, as the king of the race. Ganondorf's English voice actor in the Tears of the Kingdom, Matthew Mercer, previously portrayed the character in the fan film There Will Be Brawl. Ganon's boar-like form was based on Zhu Baizi, one of the characters from the Chinese novel Journey to the West. In fact, during the development of the first Zelda game, Ganon was originally going to be named Hakai, the Japanese transliteration of Zhu Baizi. There are only 2 games where Ganondorf does not transform into Ganon, those being The Wind Waker and the Tears of the Kingdom. In the latter game, he instead transforms into the Demon Dragon. In addition, there are only 3 games where Ganondorf expresses no interest in the Triforce, those being Four Swords Adventures, Oracle of Seasons, Oracle of Ages, and Tears of the Kingdom. Ganondorf is seen wielding a pair of swords again. My god. Although the Hyrule Historia nonetheless made clear that a reincarnation of Ganondorf did indeed Although the Hyrule